What I thought I would do was start this particular section with, I'm going to call it a little bit of proselytizing. So just hang tight, and I promise we will get through to the end and not have you all necessarily feel chastened by the sermon here. But one of the things that I think is important, one of the things that I think none of us get to realize in the moment, but maybe perhaps later on we'll have an opportunity to realize it, are the following two things that I think are maxims that will guide the rationale for why we're still talking about using Dreamweaver here in the apocalypse of 2020. Now, the following statement is absolutely true, that the breadth of your knowledge is completely shaped by your experiences, right? So taking a course like this helps shape your knowledge and your experience. Taking or working with platforms, whether or not it is here in Web 102, it's potentially for some of you having taken Web 290 with things like WordPress, so on and so forth. And it's absolutely true that the things that you do have every impact on those things that you know. But let me suggest that all of your experience will not speak for the larger community at broad. So just because your experience teaches you one thing doesn't mean that that's going to be what everybody's experience here is going to be. Why am I hammering on that here for the introduction to Dreamweaver? And the reason for that is, if you were to go out to blogs, to message boards, heaven forbid, Reddit, or something to that effect, even if you were to go to something like Creative Block or Smashing Magazine, or, you can pick your poison for who's talking professionally about web publishing platforms, you are going to find that universally Dreamweaver is, how can I put this gently, chatted on verbally all the time over all of those mediums. And what I'll tell you is, certainly there are other alternatives in 2020 to get, a close approximation of the job that Dreamweaver does in a different way. Is it true that we could use a broad content management platform instead of Dreamweaver? Yeah, absolutely. You could use WordPress. You could use Bootstrap. Both of those we will get more exposure to here down the road in just a few weeks. While Bootstrap, moreover, we will get exposure to. Web 290 is getting exposure to WordPress in much finer detail. We could use other content management platforms. We could use Adobe's own alternative content management platforms. We could use something like Magento. We could go with 1,000 different kinds of server-based alternatives. We could go to Joomla. We could go to fill in the blanks here. And all of those, yeah, absolutely are alternative. So why spend time here in 2020 with Dreamweaver? Big companies can afford the cost, the architecture, the upkeep, the maintenance of having bigger platforms like that. But what about the millions upon millions of smaller shops that rely on, one or two of you as web designers, or even, maybe not worse, but suboptimally rely on themselves to do the web publishing? They need to rely on a WYSIWYG platform. WYSIWYG being what you see is what you get. WYSIWYG, WYSIWYG. So, you cannot look at a the industry as a monolith. You cannot look to the industry as being all comprised of massive companies with huge amounts of, budget that they can just foist at the development of their web property. Probably, you are going to come across companies that are much, much smaller, that need a very much more contained use of their web platform. And it turns out that WYSIWYGs are really good alternatives for them. So here with DreamWeaver, what I'll tell you is the kind of the old concept of it, right? Everything kind of changes over time. And if there's one company that I can really give like a gold seal of approval to for what it is that they understand about design, it's Adobe. They really have a good grasp on what it is that content managers need to be able to get that content out to their unknown potential future clients. And Adobe's really good at that. And Adobe has a ton of other platforms that you could use. The aforementioned Magento is a very big, very robust, and I'll be damned, an open source platform that you can use to run, very, very large scale operations. As a matter of fact, Adobe has brackets. Brackets can be used as a what you see is what you get type editor if you know what you're doing with it. And all of that is true. And that's kind of the old understanding of the sum and total, the complete feature set of what DreamWeaver is capable of giving you. DreamWeaver via the CC subscription here, DreamWeaver in 2020 has really morphed into more of a brackets. It really has morphed into more of a Atom text editor. It's an integrated developer's environment by now. What you will see here with the LinkedIn Learning course, you will notice it is, I'm going to use the word brief. And this is whereby I am conflicted here. What I will tell you is the course that I am assigning to you is a 2 hour and 41 minute, I believe. I'm also dyslexic as hell this week, so if it's 2 hours and 14 minutes, so be it. That course offers to you the snapshot of what I think most accurately represents what the biggest bulk of the use for DreamWeaver would be here in 2020. And what that is to create single serving, I'm going to say one-page websites, right? It's not necessarily that it has to be inside of the scroll of one page. I don't mean that, but I mean a single serve website. So a bunch of content coming down to you, perhaps a bunch of, reference anchors inside of there so that you can do your inline navigation, but not necessarily page A to B to C to D, just a very, very long single serve web page. And I really do believe that that is a fantastic use for DreamWeaver here in 2020. Now, for those of you who either number one are, as I am, trapped in your basement, or if you have a more involved need for DreamWeaver, what I will do is below this video, what I will do is alongside of the one we have listed here, I will give to you the link for the very, very good but very big. It's 8 hours plus. And what I'll tell you is that really gets you from the very beginning to the very end with DreamWeaver. That covers a great amount of fantastic detail of how you can use DreamWeaver to manage repositories, how you can use DreamWeaver to manage hosting, what you can do with DreamWeaver to create interactive content. And the snapshot we're taking by its nature of a snapshot, is not that involved. And you can tell by the time value that one requires versus the other. So whereas I think you will be getting sufficient exposure and sufficient practice for your 1 week free trial of DreamWeaver for the Adobe Creative Cloud, I think that there is more exploration that might be in your interest to be able to do there. And to do that, I would suggest, and again, the link is down below, I would suggest the other included class. So that is my sermon on DreamWeaver, is do not judge a book by its cover. I had to get back for some sermonizing there. Do not judge a book by its cover. Do not judge an industry by its largest players. As a matter of fact, that gives you a really poor snapshot of, the web publishing industry. If you think of DreamWeaver as a fantastic shortcut tool to be able to provide for you a quick means of developing single-use web pages like the one that you are going to see here, that becomes a really powerful content publishing tool, because you can create emails, you can create single-use pages for landing pages for marketing, for example. We'll get an opportunity to talk about that later on, again with Bootstrap, and later on with some of our, when we get into PHP and JavaScript. Look what you can do with sites that look like they're dedicated from the ground up to a single client, but we're using server-side tools and front-end content management platforms to help deliver that content to people. DreamWeaver really can be a focal point for that, and provide to you that kind of content in a really rapid environment. So it is not the garbage software that you heard about while trolling Reddit, if that's what you do.